Hi everyone, welcome today to another edition of Table Talk with Heidi Jakoby, and my guest today is Jim Dobens, and we just want to have a conversation about our town and some of the things that we've been curious about. Jim, welcome. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure, Jim Dobens. I've resided at 4 Eagle Drive in Hudson for the last 41 years.
So you've been here a lot longer than I have. I've only arrived here in 1994.
Well, I grew up in Nashua starting in 1955. We did move away for a few years after college, and then I was able to relocate my family back up into the Northeast and New England because I wanted them to grow up in the New England environment and experience the culture and heritage that they come from.
Well, and what I thought was really interesting when I moved into Hudson, literally there were a lot less traffic lights than there are now, and that the difference between 1994 and today, I see dramatic changes. Could you talk a little bit about the changes you have observed over the years?
Yes. When we were actually living in Long Island, I was asked to relocate to manage our Northeast region. We were going to come back to New Hampshire. I grew up in Nashua, but really didn't want to live in Nashua. It was becoming a little bit too crowded, so we looked at Hudson. And Hudson, frankly, was, when I was growing up, was a great farming community. Mm-hmm. And then it transitioned over to a more residential community and ultimately turned into commercial development. But where we live in the south end of Hudson, I mean, it was frankly just a 2-lane road when it first started, with farms on both sides of me. And then it started to develop. The only thing I can remember from a light perspective mm-hmm. is we had a flashing yellow light when the Sagamore Bridge was built. And then the next light I hit was actually, I think, at Central Street.
Oh my gosh, that's a long way.
Yeah. And then there was like 1 or 2 downtown, but maybe the town at that point in time when we first moved here had 6 lights.
Right.
And now my wife was in the school district for years. I believe there are 16 lights now to go from our house to the school.
Right. Well, and to that point, it's growth. With growth comes more traffic, comes more lights, comes more people passing through our town as well. What I found interesting was, I know my house in the South End is built on old farmland, as mm-hmm. probably many of our houses are, and that it does take time to get across town. But I keep hearing about new traffic studies or sophisticated lights that are going in so that the flow is better. What is your take on what's going on with traffic these days?
Let's take a step back and see what truly happens. Infrastructure drives a lot of the traffic. Mm-hmm. The reason Nashua developed versus Hudson is because the railroad built on the other side of the river.
That's right.
So the railroad builds on the other side of the river, all the mills pop up,
mm-hmm.
and you can just follow the railroad tracks. Anywhere in the country, you can follow that. Hudson, again, was a rural community. It was a farmland.
Yep.
It grew the food that went to the cities on the other side of the river. And we had one bridge. Mm-hmm. And the traffic flowed on that one bridge. In fact, there used to be a train trolley that used to go back and forth over it. That dates me now.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it was around when I was a little kid, but it was there. So we had the one bridge. They built the second bridge at the end of Hudson, mm-hmm. the Sagamore Bridge in the south end of Hudson. And all of a sudden that opened up the commercial development, which was basically started by the sale of the old Cash Linus farm, mm-hmm. Which opened that property up and commercial development started. Again, whenever you do that, it adds traffic.
Right.
As you open up more strips of land, it creates more development, which adds more traffic. They then decided to build a circumferential highway, which had been on the planning boards since the 1950s. If they would have built it back in the 50s, right. It would have been built, it would have been done, and Hudson would have developed more. So they added the second bridge, mm-hmm. downtown Hudson. They added the second bridge in the south end of Hudson. And again, that just triggered more and more traffic that came not only into Hudson, but through Hudson.
Right.
So again, as you look at it historically, the development has just continued. And our infrastructure within the town of Hudson has not kept pace with that development.
Right.
The one thing that I will say, the old expression is, if you build it, they will come.
Yep.
If you widen a road, you add a road, the traffic will come. the development will come.
Right.
So a decision has to be made is, what is it that you truly want to be? I can use examples of Route 3 widening.
Right.
That didn't play out well. The Big Dig, that didn't work out so well.
Right.
I kept hearing about the mitigation on Route 3.
Right.
Don't worry, Sanders is only going to have so many cars a day, or Walmart so many cars a day, or any of the other developments.
Right.
It now gets you to a point that if you listen to every single board meeting that I attended, everything was going to be minimal impact. Well,
Right.
how is it I went from a 2-lane road to I get up to the Sagamore Bridge and it's almost 8 lanes wide now?
Right. Right.
Minimal impact? I don't think so.
Well, and they just added another
Turning
one on
lane.
another turning lane on the other
Oh yeah,
side.
that's just a beaut.
Yeah, and yes, I'm sure we've all had our difficulty.
Try to take that one now, as I did about
Yeah.
3 days ago, when a 53-foot tractor trailer is on the outside coming in, and I'm on the inside halfway into it.
Right, exactly. It does create more challenging driving, in my opinion.
Yes, and then that all merges together up top.
Yeah, and even with the center turn lane, I grew up on Long Island for years. I was taught how to use a center turn lane years ago. But
You're talking about the suicide lane?
yes, that's what people call it. But if you use it correctly, it can be used safely. But you have to be taught that. And it's not something that was here years ago. It came as I was here. So I know people are not used to that. But I think what's interesting to me is the number of cars that are driving directly through Hudson and not stopping for anything. We don't have a destination other than, Benson's Park or some other entertainment areas or restaurants and different places, but a lot of people really just drive through our town.
Well, I would just say it's a pass-through town that's creating our traffic issues. I don't believe the traffic issues are being caused by the residents themselves.
Right.
We missed some great opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, with the green meadow land that is now being torn up and a flow center put in, which frankly I don't believe the town leadership truly understands what's going to happen to this town. You took the Friary land and threw another distribution center in, and you have the state looking at Hudson. Well, it's a center point of New England. Boy, we really could get development that could be put up there.
Right.
Our roads and infrastructure aren't designed for it, nor will they ever be able to
handle
capably be able to handle all of it. So the town missed an opportunity.
Well, and
missed a huge opportunity.
Well, and let's talk about that for a second, because you probably were here at the time. My understanding is that the Friary land was actually offered to the town years ago. The citizens voted to purchase it, and then the elected officials chose not to.
Correct.
And that has led us to a large warehouse and some other buildings on there that are now affecting our traffic in ways it probably wouldn't have had the town purchased that land. Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people don't know that.
No, they don't. And we missed that opportunity where we could have centered, town offices, we could have done something good with it. But I'll also say, and I kept hearing from certain members of the select board and planning board about the Green Meadow estate, or the Green Meadow golf course, a number of years ago, where there were a couple of developments that were proposed. Well, as abutters, we wanted what I would call back then was going to be like a Tuscan Village type thing.
Right.
We wanted it. Nobody battled it.
Right.
But yet there's this belief that we were all NIMBYs, not in our backyard for that development and one of the other ones, when we weren't.
No, and
they just didn't get it approved
exactly
because of the environmental issues.
And my understanding is that a couple of the developers moved forward as far as they could and then either lost their funding or the economy changed and they no longer wanted to build it. But I have always heard that the members and the abutters wanted that development to come in, that was a preference.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of misconceptions out in our town about what occurred in history and what's fact and what's not fact.
Right.
And this is our best understanding. And you were an abutter. I wasn't an abutter. I wasn't here for most of that.
No, I mean, we were not against several of the other developments that wanted to go, and we felt that would have benefited the town. A logistics center, flow center, distribution center, whatever you choose to want to call it, and they are all different. In fact, I would argue leadership in the town has no clue the different types of logistics centers that are out there.
And that's my concern, because I've done some research, and a flow center is not a cross dock. It is not a distribution center. It is not a warehouse. A flow center is very unique. Could you tell us a little bit about what a flow center is?
I mean, a flow center was actually a concept created by Target. I believe their first one opened up in New Jersey. A flow center is to be able to flow goods to your stores or the consumer in a way that best meets the needs for both. So the flow center will store goods.
Right.
A flow center will cross-dock goods to transport them to other areas. A flow center will fulfill the needs of particular stores at a rate that they would like it at. So instead of needing, for example, 100 units of something, they only need 10 units. Well, that's what a flow center will do. And it's also designed for last mile delivery.
Right.
So they do want to fulfill to their guests, as Target would call them, smaller orders that could be delivered to home. So the town never truly reviewed, they just viewed the flow center as the same thing as a distribution center.
Right.
And I'd challenge all of them if they could define for me what a distribution center is, a warehouse is, logistics center is, and a flow center is, as well as the last mile. Just consider what Target's put in. It's all of the above.
Right. And what I found interesting is, to that point, when it went before the planning board and we talked about Target, is they said that things would be flowing out to other, like UPS and FedEx, which would take that directly to consumer. So there was always a direct-to-consumer piece of it, as they spoke about it, which to me is last mile, but people define that differently or view it differently than I do.
Right.
And I do think it's interesting to think about how logistics have changed even since COVID. And you taught me that. Like, there are all these different ways of going. And I can't imagine, with Target doing both food and dry goods, that there's not going to be more needs for refrigeration, for freezing, for different things within that center.
I would
it's so large.
argue that's coming.
Yeah. Because they said it wasn't.
I would argue that's coming.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see how, once things are built, then those companies can come back and ask for different things going forward. And I think you've seen that.
In fact, one thing I haven't seen is, what is the real traffic study that the Target Flow Center is going to generate? I mean, I know the Hudson Logistics Center with Amazon provided one that they say was only going to be at 40% capacity.
Right.
What is the true traffic impact or implication that this flow center will have? And when you start combining that with the Good for Life distribution center, the other high density housing units, and some of the other projects that are being built, one of the fascinating things for me is that the town doesn't take into account all the developments under construction and the impact together of all that traffic. They look at it individually. And when you look at it individually, you go, oh, I can handle that. Right.
And what I find interesting is, so many of us go through back roads to get around town. And it's not like we're the only ones who know about those back road routes. I see a lot of Massachusetts people passing through, and I'm sure a lot of people from other towns. So that's my concern, is that the town never looked at the entire town. And they're not considering where trucks want to go, where people want to go, where the businesses are, and how we're going to get around.
It's all about doing an overall traffic implication study across the region, which is using Hudson based on what's transpiring here, moving it through Pelham, moving it through Litchfield, moving it down through Tingsboro. You got to remember, it's all being driven, all vehicles that'll be out there, especially trucks, will be driven by GPS.
Oh, that's right.
I would encourage anybody to go drive over to the Walmart in South Hudson and plug into it that you want to go over to Interstate 93, or you want to get down to 490. You'll be surprised of where the GPS is going to send you.
Right.
And we're going to have one of these days where a 53-foot tractor trailer is hauling its way down Wasson Road because it's the best way to cut across.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there when that happens.
No, but again, you'll start to see more and more of these trailers and traffic heading south into South Hudson, up into Drake and Tingsboro. And I just remember a developer saying that there will not be a single tractor trailer leaving that development which will take a right and go through Tingsboro.
Right, right.
Stunning.
Well, and we've all seen tractor trailers from all different areas going across the town, which is part of where we're located. I mean, it just is. I find it.
I mean, I had, Heidi, I had
Yeah.
somebody complain to me recently of the tractor trailer volume that was coming down and around Lowell Road and River Road. Over currently.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, they haven't seen anything
No,
yet.
no.
Anything yet.
Well, I also think it's interesting that the state isn't looking at this whole region because of the amount of traffic that's happening and the amount of industry that's even being built on the other side of the river in Nashua, on the south end of Nashua. So there's a lot of impact going to be happening that has to do with even other towns in the area. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. So what do you think?
I mean, there are a lot of changes. I mean, keep in mind that Nashua Hudson, if you actually looked at New England, is like the dead center crosshairs of New England.
Wow, I never knew that.
So it puts us in a very unique spot to be able to move goods, ship goods, create commerce throughout New England in the Hudson, Nashua area. I mean, I believe that the town will be pushed by the state. If they could actually build a road that connects Route 3 to 93, they would do it.
Right.
Because then it would allow them to access what I would just call the triangle, which would be Manchester down to the Nashua Hudson area and over to the 93 area, or call it around the Salem.
Right, right.
And what they're missing is that cross piece,
Right.
which now is surfaced from the circumferential highway to the Hudson Boulevard. So
Yeah. Well, you know, I really appreciate the conversation and the ability to really look at what the town looked like years ago, what we've experienced, at least my husband and I, in the short time I've been here, and to really just have a conversation.
yeah, I mean, Hudson, again, as I've said before, great farming community, moved into a residential community, has gone to commercial.
Right.
And what I'm really afraid of is it truly becomes a commercial industrial center
Right.
and not a great place to call home.
Yeah. And we moved here for its rural nature. I mean, that was why we came here. And we liked that it had enough resources close by, but didn't have a lot of industry.
Exactly.
So thank you. I appreciate this.
No, anytime.
So I hope this was helpful just to give you all some insight into who Mr. Dobens is and what we think and what we've been discussing for, 3 years? We've known each other now 3 or 4 years.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies. So we're all concerned about Hudson and creating it to be the best place it can be. So I hope this is informative. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to vote March 12th.